Hello everybody, my name is Constant Bonnard and I'm going to be talking about the incantatives, how to modify society with collective evaluations. This is joint work with my friend and colleague Benjamin Nesser. We have published a version of this talk in French and we are preparing a version in English. Okay. Let me start by introducing the subject through slogans in demonstrations. Slogans in demonstrations are speech acts which, when successful, may modify a social reality. They may create changes in how people think and act, what kind of groups they belong to. They may bring progresses to a society. But how would that work? How can slogans such as "Color is not a crime," "Black Lives Matter," "The future is female," "Rebel for life," or "We resist," modify society? And these are the kinds of questions in which we'll be interested. And in particular, we will be interested in what kind of speech acts they are and how, as speech acts, they may modify the social reality. And our answer actually is quite simple. The idea is that they modify social reality by expressing and generating collective evaluations, but that these kind of speech acts have been overlooked, and we have had to coin a name for them. Those are incantatives. So the take-home messages are following. The incantatives are a class of speech acts that have been overlooked. Their purpose is to express and generate collective evaluations, and if successful, these speech acts contribute to the construction of social reality. The plan will be first to talk about what I will call the orthodox theory about speech act and society, which says basically that performative speech acts may modify society by conventionally establishing institutional facts. I will then present briefly a lacuna of this orthodox theory, because value-based collectives are an important part of the social reality, but they need not be institutionalized. Nevertheless, we will argue, our contribution is to argue that the incantatives are a kind of speech acts which may modify society, which may modify value-based collectives without institutions, by expressing and generating collective evaluations. Okay, so let's go on the first part of the talk. What I call the orthodox theory basically stems out of the work of J.L. Austin on performatives, and in particular on exercitives, which is a kind of performative in how to do things with word. His famous conference book, Austin talks about sentences such as the following: "I now pronounce you husband and wife," said by the priest at a wedding ceremony. He writes, "It seems clear that to utter the sentence in question, in of course the appropriate circumstances," we'll come back to that in a second, "to do so is not to describe my doing it, it is to do it. The uttering of these words is pronouncing a husband and a wife, a married couple, is to create a change in the society, is to establish a new fact, that is, that Sam and Maria now are a married couple at the moment when the priest successfully perform the speech act, 'I now pronounce you husband and wife.'" And that is one way in which we can do actual things with words. So, according to the orthodox theory, for a speech act to modify society successfully, there need to be institutionalized conventions making up the appropriate circumstances, in the quote. And Austin says this about that, among other things. He says, "There must exist an accepted conventional procedure having a certain conventional effect, and that procedure to include the uttering of certain conventionalized words by certain persons according to certain conventions in certain circumstances." So, for instance, the priest is a particular person. The pronouncement formula, the specific conventionalized formula, I pronounce you husband and wife are certain specific words that the priest must utter. The church institution is a certain context, a certain circumstance, and there must be a certain procedure or so. And for instance, the reaction of the audience, including the reaction of the husband and the wife, must be appropriate, must follow the convention. That's Austin's picture, basically. There are all these conventions, and thanks to them, when the priest says the words, the magic happens and a new social fact is created. According to John Searle, who was Austin's student, this is how speech acts modify a society. First, by saying something, an authority declares that an X counts as a Y in a certain context C. So for instance, that Sam and Maria now count as a married couple in the context of, say, the church. The relevant people conventionally accept this, so for instance, the audience of the wedding, but also the mayor of the city, for instance. And so a new institutional fact is created. X now is officially a Y in C. Sam and Maria now officially are married couple in the church and the broader context. And Searle adds to this, with the important exception of language itself, all of institutional reality, and therefore, in a sense, all of human civilization, is created by speech acts that have the same logical form as declarations, that is, that have these features that I've been talking about till now. It's a pretty strong claim, and we're not sure that it's correct. So we'll present a lacuna now of this orthodox theory. The orthodox theory only accounts for institutional facts, but there are other kinds of social facts. So for instance, consider the following. The ecofeminists, Beyoncé's fan base, the Beehive, the punks, demonstrators, these can exist without being institutionalized. There is no need for the conventional recognition that a constitutive rule declared by an authority holds. Rather, these are value-based collectives, as I will say. They are groups that exist because a bunch of people share some values. So for instance, the Beyoncé's fan base, they share some evaluation about Beyoncé and recognize themselves as such, or something like that. So here are a few differences between value-based collectives on the one hand and institutional groups on the other hand. First, conventions are not necessary for value-based collectives. Value-based collectives can exist without conventions, but institutional groups can't. Exercitives or declarations, this kind of speech act that Austin and Searle have been talking about, are not necessary for value-based collectives, but they are necessary for institutional groups. Value-based collectives are constituted by a shared value or ideal, then that is necessary for their existence, but no such thing is necessary for institutional groups. And finally, the boundaries of value-based collectives are not categorical or fixed, they are rather vague and floating and moving a lot, but that's not true for institutional groups that have clear boundaries, categorical fixed ones. Note, by the way, that there are other kinds of social groups, I believe, beside these two, but we're just interested in the differences between these two. Okay, so here is an intermediary conclusion. Value-based collectives need to be accounted for by social ontology because they represent an important social kind beside institutional groups. However, the Austinian/Searlean theory cannot account for them because they are not conventionally based, they don't work as institutions. Fortunately, we believe to have a solution to fill part of this lacuna. And that's our contribution, the theorizing of the incantatives and how they may modify society by expressing and generating collective evaluations. So think back again about the example I've used in the introduction. What kind of speech acts are these slogans? Are they assertions? Are they orders? Well, I think they fall neatly in none of the orthodox speech act categories. And we'll see that using Searle's taxonomy of speech acts, but I could also have used Austin's taxonomy or Back and Harnish's taxonomy. Don't have time to see them all. So these slogans, they are not directives, so, unlike orders, for instance. Oh, and this thing I'm not going to talk about it, but this is the logical form of the directives according to Searle. So the slogans in questions are not directives because their purpose is not merely to direct the behavior of the audience. However, like directives, they prefer to create a change in the world by modifying the audience goal priorities through representing a desired goal. So, for instance, a feminist slogan will represent somehow the goal, like equality between genders as a goal, as a desired goal, and will aim to create a change in the evaluation of the audience. And so they have somehow a world-to-mind direction of it, as we say in this literature. The slogans in question are not assertives, unlike, for instance, descriptions, because they don't purport to merely express an accurate belief. When one says Black Lives Matter, one is not trying to just state a true fact. One is doing much more than that. However, like assertives, they prefer to refer to a situation deemed as literally valuable, and so, like assertives, they aim to represent the world accurately. They have a mind to world direction of fate. Even though the future is female may not be taken as a literal, truth evaluable contribution, it still aims to represent some valuable state of affair accurately, something like a non-discriminatory world as being valuable. Now, these slogans are not commissives either, because their purpose is not to merely create an obligation for the utterer to do something, unlike, for instance, promises, but like commissives, they may commit the speakers to certain actions, but rather to types of actions than to token actions. So, for instance, when a protester in an Extinction Rebellion demonstration says "Rebel for life," this speaker may be committed to certain ecological actions, but not to a specific one, as when one says, "I promise to come tomorrow." The slogans in question are not expressives either, unlike, for instance, apologies, as they aim to create a change in the world. They have a world-to-mind direction of it, and to convey a collective attitude, which is supposed to be fit to a value-loaded situation, and so have also a mind-to-world direction of it. And these properties are not properties of expressives according to Searle's taxonomy anyway. However, like expressives, the slogans in question do purport to express evaluative attitudes such as blame, praise, pride, and determination. Finally, the slogans are not declarations, unlike the wedding declaration or the pronouncement of the priest, because they don't purport to create institutional facts, and they do express an attitude, unlike declarations according to Searle's taxonomy once again. However, like declarations, they both purport to represent the world and to change it, so they have both directions of it. Okay. So we see that the slogans I've introduced don't fall neatly in any of Searle's categories of speech acts, and that we could make the same remark for Austin's categories or for Back and Harnish's categories. So we had to find a new label for this kind of speech act, and we have called them incantatives. And that's how we define them. We define them through their illusionary point. First one being the following: they purport to represent a situation deemed as really valuable, and so have the mind-to-world direction of it, by expressing a collective evaluative attitude about this situation. Furthermore, they purport to create a change in the world by getting others to share the evaluation in question, and so have also a world-to-mind direction of it. So in sum, they purport to express and generate a collective evaluation. And that's how we formulate their logical form using source tools. Now, I've been only talking about slogans, but many linguistic expressions may be used to perform an incantative, so slogans, but also mottos, war cries, precepts, political discourses, preaches, ceremonies, rituals, or even chants or hymns. In all these cases, there seems to be a point, that is to express and generate a collective evaluation. I mean, there can at least. These may be used as incantatives, may be used to perform an incantative. They need not be one in any case. So our three claims were the following. First, the incantatives are a class of speech acts that have been overlooked. Second, their purpose is to express and generate collective evaluations. And third, if successful, these speech acts contribute to the construction of social reality. I haven't really discussed the third one, so how does it work? Well, let's consider an example. Emancipation shouted during a feminist demonstration. If it is an incantative, according to our theory, when it is successful, it will first collectively express something like a strong, urgent desire, which is an evaluative attitude, about women emancipation, the evaluative content of this attitude. And secondly, if it is successful and if it is an incantative, it will reinforce and or generate this attitude about this content in the audience or in some of the audience. Because evaluative attitudes are what distinguishes in-groups and out-groups of value-based collectives, if it is a successful incantative, emancipation shouted during a feminist demonstration will modify the boundaries of value-based collectives. Okay, let me detail that. And as such, it will modify the social reality. So, by shouting emancipation with a strong, urgent desire, Anna and Joe show that they belong to a group which evaluates women emancipation as strongly, urgently desirable. Bob and Maria, who attend the feminist demonstration for the first time, are moved by the crowd's enthusiasm. Sharing the eagerness, they begin to shout as well. Sam, a passerby who despises any kind of demonstration, scorns the crowd's effusion. Anna, Joe, Bob, and Maria are brought together by the slogan, and Sam is drawn further. The group of demonstrators and possibly of feminism or feminists are modified, and these are two tokens of value-based collectives that are modified through the slogan, according to us. So, conclusion. The incantatives are a class of speech acts which has been neglected. Their purpose is the expression and generation of collective evaluations. As such, they contribute to the construction of social reality, just like Austin's exercitives or Searle's declarations. And they do so notably by creating, reinforcing, and maintaining the boundaries which constitute value-based collectives. Thank you for your attention.